welcome to my first Pokemon Wi-Fi battle. Now, this is going to be a battle against a friend of mine from DA. I was using a full new team that I've never used before, so I really wasn't sure what to expect, plus he didn't tell me what he was bringing. Now, looking at his team, I noticed that his team is mostly offensive, which can be told by the Garchomp and the legendaries and the Emboar. I didn't actually expect him to lead off with Garchomp. I expected him to lead off with a legendary, but he didn't. Now, I was kind of surprised that he had 2 Giratinas, but that meant that my Azelf and Gengar were in extreme danger. But I managed to get past them. Now, in my side of the team, I have a mix of offense and defense, although most of my Pokemon go on the offense this battle. The Azelf is actually the most important to me in my team, so I'm hoping to get rid of those 2 Giratinas so that Azelf can do some damage. I didn't know what legendaries he was going to bring, I just knew he was going to bring 3 of them, so I randomly threw together 3 legendaries and 3 non-legendaries. Well, now, let's begin the battle. Now, he's going to lead off with the Garchomp, which I was not expecting. Either way, I was going to lead off with Aggron, so it doesn't really matter what he leads off with. He didn't tell me his Garchomp and his Emboar weren't going to be level 100, but that didn't really affect the match very much. Now, Aggron's only point is to set up Stealth Rocks. I was actually kind of fearing the Earthquake, but luckily he only carried the Bulldoze, so I did manage to survive that. Though I have a lot of defense EVs, so I figure I would have been fighting against an Earthquake anyways. So as I said, her only point is to set up Stealth Rocks, which she managed, so that's good. So, fearing another Bulldoze, I'm going to switch out. Now, I could have switched out into my Gengar or my Azelf, but I actually switched out into my Genesect because I'm carrying the Ice Beam, and I wanted to get an Ice Attack up against this Garchomp. I figured I could survive another Bulldoze if that's what he wanted to go for, and the speed drop doesn't really mean anything to me because I'm timid nature with 252 speed EVs. My Genesect's mostly a special attacker, so I went for the Ice Beam, forgetting that he carried an Emboar. Now, I was actually fearing this Emboar because I was fearing the Flare Blitz, despite the fact that it's only level 84. But luckily for me, I actually get the Freeze hacks on this Emboar, and I was really expecting him to switch out when he got frozen, because I figured that nobody would want to stay in when they're frozen saw it. So I kept going for the Ice Beam to damage whatever was in his party. Now, the fact that I went for an Ice Beam on an Emboar does reveal that I'm Choice Scarf set, which could be bad because you could predict me, but he must have expected himself to thaw out quickly because he actually stayed in the whole time and allowed me to keep spamming Ice Beam. Ice Beam isn't really doing much, but it's doing enough to take him down, and that's really all that matters. I wasn't really worried about him thawing out, and if he did, I really had no overuse for Genesect, so I wasn't worried about that. But Emboar actually is going to go down. Now, next he sent out an Empoleon, and I was figuring at this point he must know that I'm a Choice Scarf or a Choice Band set because the fact that I'm spamming Ice Beam. So I actually go into my Azelf not having any other counter to this Empoleon. He goes for the Hydro Pump, but I actually managed to avoid it. At this point, my best attack is Fire Blast because I actually don't carry the Thunderbolt, and this is a fully offensive Azelf with a Life Orb. So, I wasn't really expecting him to last long. I'm not sure why he went for the Ice Beam. Maybe he was predicting my switch into Gliscor to go for an Earthquake. But I stay in and go for another Fire Blast because I know I can take anything and dish out that last bit of damage needed to take down Empoleon. Now, at this point, I was 100% expecting a Giratina switch in because it seemed obvious, which is actually what he went for. So that didn't surprise me at all, because Ghost is super effective against Psychic. Knowing that it'd be more like to stay in, I usually would have switched out, but I went for the Shadow Ball because I was going to fodder off my Azelf and scout out what moves he wanted to use. But he actually goes for the Shadow Force, which is good because I can switch in something that wants to take a Shadow Force and save my Azelf for another day. So I switch out my Azelf Tamius and go into my Aggron to fodder him off and take the hit. Since Aggron's only point was to set up the Stealth Rocks, I really don't need her anymore. So this Shadow Force is going to take her down. Okay, just kidding. But I know that Aggron's not going to be around much longer, even with the Leftovers recovery. I decided to stay in to go for the Head Smash, because I am a Head Smash Rock Head combo, but he actually has the Aura Sphere, which is able to take me down. Again, don't really care, because I was firing off my Aggron anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now, I'm going to bring back out my Azelf, because I know I can dish out Shadow Ball damage and take down this Giratina before I get taken down, because I am also timid nature, and I carry some speed EVs. So Giratina is going to go down. And I figured that the most obvious switch-in was never Giratina, but at this point I didn't really care. But he actually goes into the Palkia, probably knowing that I'm just going to Shadow Ball the Giratina for super effective damage. I actually want to save my Azelf, because I want to have that Shadow Ball for never Giratina, so I'm going to U-turn out of here. I am on red HP, but that doesn't really matter to me because I'm just going to use Tammy as his fodder later. So I bring out my Genesect, because I really have no good counter to this Palkia, and I was expecting like the Spatial Rend or something. The fact that I got the attack raise does show that he's more of a defensive set than a special defensive set, but that doesn't really matter. I take the Spatial Rend pretty well. And at this point, I didn't have a good move, and I'm actually max attack with the Explosion. So I decided to go for the Explosion, because I really don't have any other use for this Genesect, and the Explosion can take out Palkia, which is good. So Palkia is going to go down to that Explosion. And again, it's good because I wanted to get rid of Palkia, because I had no good counter for it. I bring out my Gliscor, not knowing what he's going to bring out, but figuring since the water types are gone, Gliscor is a safe switch-in. This is obviously a Poison Heal Toxic Orb Gliscor. And at this point, I just wanted to scout out what his second Giratina would do, to see if it was maybe a different set than his first Giratina, so I went for the Substitute. It actually goes for the Shadow Ball instead of the Shadow Force, and I'm not sure if maybe he knew I wasn't very defensive, or if he was just didn't have anything else to go for. But either way, I am going to survive that hit, and that's going to be good because I'm going to need this Gliscor. I go for Protect to get some Poison Heal damage, and to scout if he's still going to go for the Shadow Ball, which he does. So at this point, I'm not really sure what to do, so I decided to go for the Toxik and put on some poison damage. Since his Giratina usually stays in like the rest of his Pokemon, I was expecting him to sit there and take the poison damage. I figured I could survive a Shadow Ball because I am rather defensive, but he actually gets the crit, which is really not good because I really wanted to use this Gliscor for later because Gliscor is my favorite Pokemon. Knowing that my Gliscor really can't do much, I decided to switch it out. I could have gone for the Protect and gotten Poison Field damage, but that really seemed pointless. So at this point, I'm just going to fodder off my Azelf because I really don't need it, and the impending Shadow Ball is pretty obvious. So I do go down to the Shadow Ball, but again, Tamius did his job, so that's fine. So I decide to play a risky game here, and I actually bring in my Gengar Seville. Seville has a lot of speed EVs, and I was hoping to disable the Shadow Ball because I figured he would go for it since he was continuously going for it. But my opponent actually makes a smart play and goes for the Shadow Force instead. Now I don't know if he predicted my disable or if he just decided he wanted to go overkill, but this is actually kind of good for me because I can now switch in something that wants to take a Shadow Force and not worry about my Gengar taking unnecessary damage. I decided to fodder off my Gliscor because it's on low health anyways, and it's really not going to survive any other hits, despite the fact that it is rather defensive. So Shadow Force does take down my Gliscor, but again, I'm not worried, because all I was doing was burning off some poison time so I could bring back in my Gengar and KO with a Shadow Ball. So I bring back out my Gengar, because not Palkia, but Giratina is at low enough health to where I can Shadow Ball it off. So Shadow Ball is going to take down that Giratina, and that's good because there's really no more threats to my Gengar that can hit him for extremely high damage. I mean her, whatever. So my opponent brings back up the Garchomp, and I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure if he was going to go for the Draco Meteor or something else, so I decided to substitute off to see what exactly he's going to go for. And he actually goes for the Crunch to hit me super effectively, which is completely fine because I have a substitute up. That is going to take down my substitute, but I don't care because all I was doing was scouting out what he wanted to go for. So I figure that the Disable is kind of an obvious choice, but I do decide to go for it anyways in case he wants to go for the Crunch again, which was actually a good prediction on my part because he actually did decide to go for the Crunch again. And that's not going to hit me because of the fact that I disabled it. So at this point, I'm figuring I can take whatever other hits this Garchomp has to deal out, and because I'm faster, I can take it down with guaranteed 2 Shadow Balls. I wasn't sure what the rest of this moveset was, and I actually was expecting an Outrage and not a Draco Meteor, because I kind of forgot that Draco Meteor was a move, but Garchomp aren't usually especially offensive, and I do have some defense EV, so I figured I'd be fine. And I knew I could take it down with another Shadow Ball. So that's actually what I do. I do go for the Shadow Ball again, and my only other move is Focus Blast, and I didn't want to risk missing, plus Shadow Ball has that stab. So Shadow Ball does seem like the best choice. And that's actually going to be the game. I am going to win. And if you want to battle with me, I'll usually accept your challenge, but you have to give me a day to generate my team because I do use Pokegen. But don't worry, I don't hack unfair Pokemon or anything. So, yeah, you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, show your friends, and support my impending Wi-Fi battles. See ya!